I am 52 years old. I'm living mostly in New York City, and I have a 20-year-old son who is in college and a partner who lives in Washington, D.C.
Stephanie is, without question, one of the smartest, most thoughtful, most compassionate, most empathetic and caring people that I have ever come across.
Hello, darling. Good to see you.
Good to see you. I got you.
So let's get your skates on and thank you.
Very excited about getting a good deal on these. Okay, let's see. Okay.
I love yoga. I love roller skating. And I love partaking in everything that New York City has to offer, from theater to concert performances to musicals.
Thank you so much for coming. I've been talking to the team today about your trip to Myanmar, so
Great.
I wanted to just chat with you a little bit about timing.
I spent 2.5 decades working all over the world for organizations like the United Nations, for government, and for nonprofits on human rights protection and promotion and conflict prevention and resolution. And it's mostly the same people.
Yes.
And if you look at me, no one thinks that I'm a stage 4 cancer patient. I am living with a disease that is almost certain to kill me. My name is Stephanie, and I have cholangiocarcinoma, or bile-duct cancer.
Cholangiocarcinoma is a cancer of the cells of the bile ducts, which are tubes that carry bile from the liver to the small intestine. Bile is a substance that's secreted by the liver and stored in the gallbladder, and its main function is to help us digest fat. And so when we eat a fatty meal, the gallbladder squeezes and the bile travels down the bile ducts into the small intestine and mixes with the food. Cholangiocarcinoma is an uncommon cancer, and there are about 8,000 cases in the United States per year. And that compares to more than 100,000 cases of colon cancer per year and more than 200,000 cases of lung cancer per year.
My initial experience with cholangiocarcinoma was detecting that I had some involuntary weight loss and I had some migraines. And this led me to go get a blood test in December 2020. The blood test showed elevated liver enzymes, but nothing too alarming. And then in February, I noticed on a trip to Vermont that I had itching, like skin itching, and darkened urine. And so I called telehealth, and they immediately sent me to go get a scan at a local sort of mountain clinic. And that scan showed some tumors on my liver, and that was sort of the beginning of the cholangiocarcinoma journey.
People can have bloating, abdominal discomfort. Sometimes people can have abdominal pain, some weight loss, nausea. Some patients do have yellowing of the skin or yellowing of their eyes, called jaundice, or itchy skin.
She had been facing a number of medical issues that we couldn't quite figure out, and she was going through a whole series of tests, poking and prodding and taking pictures of various parts of her body.
The radiologist actually noted that there were lesions on my liver, which they pronounced were consistent with cancer, and then the phrase likely cholangiocarcinoma. And I had never heard of cholangiocarcinoma. That's the first time I saw it. I had been hoping for something wrong with my gallbladder that could easily be taken out. And of course, like everyone, I went down the Google rabbit hole and I learned that the prognosis for this disease is very poor and, the seriousness of the disease at that point. So cancer affects not only the individual, but obviously a whole community. And that's all of your loved ones. And it's particularly difficult for me and my son because he's one of my favorite people in the world. And I just immediately thought of all the milestones in his life that I might miss. And breaking the news to him was very difficult.
It was devastating. There are big parts of me that are in absolute denial about what the world will look like without Stephanie in it. So it has been, it has been a roller coaster ride.
My brother was diagnosed when he was 38. He just run the St. George Marathon and had some stomach trouble while he was doing that. And so he went in and just to his primary care physician, and they did an ultrasound and they could send him immediately to an oncologist, and he had stage 4 cholangiocarcinoma. I went home and just started, Googling. And this is back in 2005. There was nothing, not one thing. A couple of small, short articles, publications in PubMed. And, I looked at those and I just started reaching out to the names on the bottom, the researchers, and, just trying to find some hope for him. But there was just nothing happening. When I went with him to his last chemotherapy appointment, he lived about 15 months. And on our way home, he asked me, what are we going to do? What are we going to do with all the information we've been gathering? And he said, I think we need to start a foundation because other people won't have family that can help them. Cholangiocarcinoma Foundation's mission is to help patients and to find a cure.
I was in activities and we want your opinion, so please speak up. This foundation matters.
We hear lots of those kinds of things from our community. We do patient advocacy and patient services, patient support. We fund important research, and we work with a research network of clinicians and scientists to collaborate on important work that's being done to move the research forward.
I went to my primary care doc for something totally different, and thank goodness he sent me for an ultrasound because he thought I might have gallstones. And the ultrasound revealed a large mass on my liver, and then they did a biopsy. Showed that it was malignant, but they didn't know for sure what the primary cancer was. So technically, in the beginning, I was diagnosed with cancer of unknown primary, and that also happens to patients a lot with this, with cholangiocarcinoma. Well, I was diagnosed December 1st, 2009, a day I will never forget. It was my son's 14th birthday. I was 41 years old. I'm a mother of 6, and so it was quite the shock. I remember just begging God for 5 years to get those kids a little bit older. Fortunately, the tumor was confined to my liver, and I was able to have surgery 3 weeks later. And it was at that time I got the official diagnosis. Even though they were suspicious of cholangiocarcinoma, we weren't able to confirm it until then.
For most patients with cholangiocarcinoma, we don't know what caused their disease, which makes prevention and screening for the disease difficult. But there are some conditions that predispose to cholangiocarcinoma, and those are mainly diseases that lead to chronic inflammation of the bile ducts. That includes having chronic stones in the bile ducts, or having primary sclerosing cholangitis, which is an inflammatory disorder associated with Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, and also diseases that cause scarring of the liver, such as hepatitis B, hepatitis C, fatty liver disease, chronic alcoholism. All of these can increase the risk of cholangiocarcinoma. The treatment of cholangiocarcinoma really depends on what stage we catch it at. When it's caught in the early stages, then the mainstay of cure is surgery, and in some very select cases, transplant. When it's caught in the later stages, which is unfortunately about 80% of patients diagnosed with this disease, then we often use systemic therapy, which can be in the form of chemotherapy, immunotherapy, targeted therapy, or some combination of these drugs.
With a stage 4 cholangiocarcinoma diagnosis, one wants to be acting as fast as possible. So my doctor advised that we go ahead and start on what was standard of care at that time, which is a chemotherapy.
I was the 9th person to enter into this trial, the first with cholangiocarcinoma and the first one to have a response. And so it was a pretty incredible event. They did a lot of publication on it. The data was published in the Science Journal. The New York Times and Wall Street Journal called my family. We did interviews, and those stories went around the world. And within that first week, I received hundreds of phone calls from patients all over the world. They just wanted to have hope. And I went through that treatment twice, and then added on another treatment 3 years after my second T-cell therapy. And that's the last treatment I had, and that's been over 5.5 years ago.
You know, for nearly a decade in cholangiocarcinoma, all we had was chemotherapy. We did not have additional options. And really, over the last couple of years, we've started to get FDA approvals for drugs for patients to have more options for them. So the first approval was in 2020, and since then, there have been 5 drugs approved for the treatment of cholangiocarcinoma.
The one thing cholangiocarcinoma has going for us is we have a lot of mutations for a GI cancer. So those mutations are able to be targeted by certain drugs.
We identified IDH1 mutations and FGFR2 fusions several years ago, and this is what led scientists and companies to really look for drugs to target these. Same thing, mutations that we find now, ideally we'll have FDA-approved drugs for them in the near future. And really, a lot of laboratories and companies are actually working on the next generation of drugs, so we can actually do better than what we have right now. One of the most important takeaways is that all patients with cholangiocarcinoma undergo tumor mutational profiling to look for biomarkers. There are more actionable mutations in cholangiocarcinoma than any other GI cancer, specifically in intrahepatic cholangiocarcinoma. This has been a real game changer for patients because now we have targeted therapies and immunotherapies that can address some of these mutations.
So if you have the right markers, that's why biomarker testing is so important for patients in our cancer, is that it can lead to trials that might give them the opportunity to be, have no evidence of disease, or to really stop the progression of their cancer.
So biomarker testing is what they do. They take a sample of the tumor tissue or sometimes just a blood sample and look for the mutations in the DNA of your cancer tissue. So just because I have cholangiocarcinoma and the person next to me might have it, our cancer is made up of different mutations. So the biomarker testing shows what mutations you have in your cancer. And if you have certain mutations, those can be targeted by medications for treatment.
Targeted therapies are just like what they sound like. They're drugs that target specific mutations in the tumor. And now with tumor sequencing, we're able to identify mutations that are often driving these cancers, and we give targeted therapies to shut down the signaling that's causing these cancers to grow. It's really changed the way we think about this disease and the way we treat this disease.
The trick with cholangiocarcinoma is that it actually rapidly acclimates to the treatments thrown at it. So after a period of time, those treatments are no longer going to be effective against it. So the more treatments that you have ready and teed up, the better.
We've been giving chemotherapy for a long time, which certainly works in this disease, but it's more of a blunt instrument. Targeted therapy is more of a torpedo that hones in on very specific cells, and the goal with targeted therapy is to have fewer side effects and higher efficacy.
And the idea is really just to keep kicking the can down the road to see, will there be another treatment after that which might work? Will there be the discovery of a new drug? It's just such a rare cancer that there's a lot of research ongoing now, and the hope is that there might be better treatments in time that will offer more than the current treatments.
Stephanie has struggled and gone through all sorts of different emotional and psychological and spiritual cycles herself, and coming to grips with what this disease means, what mortality is all about, and what life is all about. I mean, I think she has come out, in an amazing place that has led her to embrace the richness and the tapestry of life and all it has to offer.
I have a vigorous yoga practice, and it's really a blessing. The mind-body connection is very important, and being able to have a strong body, I know has contributed to my well-being during this treatment. My doctor says that I'm one of his best patients, and every time he sees me, he's kind of in awe of my energy and how well I seem to be doing. And I ascribe all of that to my yoga practice.
I think when you go through something like this, that really makes you rethink your life, it helps you clarify what it is that you want to do and how you're going to go about doing it. And I just admire the patients so much who don't shrink from something this big, but who really step up and want to help others, even when they're battling their own private battle.
Within my control is my attitude and how I see it. And if I were to sit here and say, why me? And I think the question really is, why not me? And if I get the chance to plan the way that I'm living up until I die, because we're only dying for a short period of time. Ultimately, death is about living. Well, then I think that that's something that is under my control, and it's a way that I can find meaning in this whole disease. There you go. There's this white pigeon in particular that just comes and sits. This one right here. And she lets me open the window almost fully and put the food out, and then she has to battle for her position, because then all these other guys come.
I guess they're competing between this and like people's left pizza on the street or in the trash. But it's kind of a nice little distraction. Yeah, you guys aren't getting any more.
That is who Stephanie is. When she's faced with a challenge, when she's faced with an opportunity, when she's faced with a situation, she throws herself in fully and 100%.
I just want people to know that this disease it's pretty brutal, and it's on the rise. When most other cancers are coming down, this one is increasing. So I just want awareness of this cancer, and so that we can get funding to do more research and to have more long-term survivors like me.
I'm very hopeful for the future because we have such a strong group of collaborating clinicians and scientists, and they're collaborating with the research advocates who are usually patients who have, studied and can give a lot of great input, and really patients are the best experts to help.
There are efforts in early detection to try to develop blood tests to be able to identify the cancer early, because ideally if we can detect it early, we can cure it. And a bulk of the research is for patients who have advanced disease, and there's a lot of efforts to develop targeted therapies, immunotherapies, novel chemotherapies to address this disease. If we're able to identify mutations, we can ideally find more precise drugs that have better efficacy and fewer side effects. Also, profiling allows us to drive drug discovery.
The message that I would most like to impart is that the average lifespan is about 4,000 weeks, and we sleep for about 1/3 of that. So if we're looking at even just 3,000 weeks of time, let's use those weeks. Let's use that to do all the things in life that we find most meaningful. And don't wait to send that email, make that phone call, change that career, downsize to a level of consumption that allows us to perhaps travel more, whatever that is. What are you waiting for? Now is the time. And in the end, it's really love and connection that matters most overall.